She's a country music legend and a bona fide American institution, but Dolly Parton's story isn't all sunshine and roses. Dolly Parton was born in 1946 and spent her childhood in a one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. She was the fourth child of an illiterate sharecropper and a housewife who had birthed 12 kids before she turned 35. Life wasn't exactly easy for the Parton family. The nights were excruciatingly cold, the children had to share a bed, and they often washed in a nearby river using soap they'd made themselves.
How often did you bathe in the winter? Was it like once a week or every 2 weeks? Or?
Well, we bathed once a week whether we needed it or not, as the saying goes.
Dolly isn't bitter about her hardscrabble roots, though. In fact, she once told People magazine that she's grateful for the lessons her parents taught her in thrift and financial responsibility. She said, "No matter how much money I make, I'll always count my blessings quicker and more often than I count my money." Dolly's wild and free-ranging childhood in the Appalachian Mountains provided her endless songwriting inspiration, too. One of her first big hits, Coat of Many Colors, tells the story of a coat a mother lovingly sews for her daughter out of donated rags. The coat draws mockery from the girl's schoolmates, but she knows that while her family might be short of money, they're long on love. Growing up in a large family meant that Dolly and her 11 siblings often took care of one another. Dolly remembers each older child being given an infant to take care of, and little Larry Parton was her responsibility. Larry had been born in July 1955 when Dolly was just 9 years old. It was her job to get up with him in the night and rock him, to feed him, and to change him when he needed it. In a way, Dolly considered Larry her baby, and her overworked mother A.B. Lee entrusted Larry to Dolly's care. That made it all the more devastating, however, for Dolly when Larry died just 4 days after he was born. Larry's death was a tragedy for the whole family, but it hit Dolly particularly hard. All these decades later, she can still recall the heartbreak she felt when her baby passed away, and she's never quite gotten over the loss. Appearing on the Dr. Oz show in 2017, Dolly recalled a painful incident that took place when she was 6 or 7 years old. Dolly said, "I jumped across the fence onto a broken mason jar and cut 3 of my toes, just my little toes on my right foot, almost off, and they were just kind of hanging there." Too cash-strapped to take her to the doctor, Dolly's mother took the situation into her own hands. While Dolly's father and her brothers held her down, A.B. Lee used cornmeal to soak up the blood. She then attempted some DIY kitchen table surgery. Her mother used kerosene as antiseptic and then literally sewed Dolly's toes back on. Miraculously, this procedure did the trick. Dolly's toes eventually healed, and she's still walking on them today. Dolly Parton's television specials are typically celebratory affairs filled with music and joy. On occasion, though, Dolly will pull on viewers' heartstrings by recounting a sad incident from her childhood. She did just that during her Holly Dolly Christmas special in 2020, recalling one Christmas when their local church gave out small presents to the poorer families.
Even the grown-ups, the women, and, especially the kids.
However, because Dolly's mother had so many children, the person handing out the gifts told her she wouldn't be getting one herself. Dolly went over to comfort her, even offering her mother the present that she was given, but her mother refused. The whole affair taught Dolly an important lesson, however.
Because of Mama, I've always tried to have a good heart.
While Dolly Parton was growing up in rural Tennessee, she became entranced with a local woman who wore tight skirts and high heels, with bright red lipstick and low-cut tops. While their neighbors dubbed her the town tramp, Dolly saw a style icon. She later told The Guardian, "When people would say, 'she ain't nothing but trash,' I would always say, 'well, that's what I'm gonna be when I grow up.'" Dolly's grandfather, Jake Owens, was a preacher in their local church. When Dolly followed through on her promise and began dressing in a similar manner to the woman, Owens came to despise her. He'd punish her for it, sometimes even beating her. But that was the price Dolly was willing to pay in order to express herself. As Dolly says, "I'm very sensitive. I didn't like being disciplined. It hurt my feelings so bad to be scolded or whipped or whatever. But sometimes there's just that part of you that's willing, if you want something bad enough, to go for it." Meanwhile, her grandfather's sermons left an imprint on young Dolly, and not in a good way. She once told Rolling Stone, "I remember the hellfire and brimstone he used to preach and how I used to be real scared of that. It kind of grew up in a horrid atmosphere about fear of religion. We thought God was a monster in the sky." Throughout her childhood, music was interwoven into Dolly's daily life. Speaking to Your Tango years later, she recalled, "Music was such a part of our whole family. I was always plucking along on somebody's instrument."
I would always find the time when everybody else was doing something else to go pick up whatever instrument had been there.
That didn't go unnoticed by Dolly's uncle, who owned a small guitar that she loved to play. As she became more focused on singing and songwriting, he made a decision that would change her life. Dolly later said, "When he saw how serious I was about my music, he gave me his little Martin guitar, and that was my treasure." Dolly played that guitar throughout her childhood and adolescence, and it remained among her most valued possessions. Dolly told Your Tango, "When I left it home when I was 18 years old, I put it in the loft because it was beat up, and when I got money, when I got rich and famous, I was going to have it fixed up. That plan never came to fruition, however, due to an unforeseen accident that claimed her beloved instrument. As Dolly remembers, "But the loft burned down and burned up my little guitar, so I only have the neck of that one." Dolly Parton began writing songs at the tender age of 7. She got her first guitar at 8 and began performing on television at 10. The day after she graduated high school, she left her home in the Appalachian Mountains for Nashville in the hopes of pursuing a singing career in the country music capital of the world. The road to success rarely runs smooth, however. Dolly, who wanted to record country songs, was shoehorned into the pop genre by her label because executives thought her looks and voice were ill-suited to country. This, despite the fact that her songs all had the unmistakable twang and narrative panache of Tennessee's eastern hills. It took some time, but Dolly was eventually allowed to make the kind of music she wanted to, and her debut country single, Dumb Blonde, made it to number 24 in the charts. The hits kept on coming after that, and in 1967, Monument released Hello, I'm Dolly, an album that made it clear once and for all that Dolly was always more bluegrass than bubblegum. In 1967, following the release of her debut album, Dolly Parton was handpicked by Porter Wagoner to appear on his television variety program and roadshow.
Let's make her welcome right now. She's already out here, Miss Dolly Parton.
Wagoner had been immediately bewitched by the 20-year-old Dolly's beauty, brains, and talent, but she found it more difficult to win over his fans, as they were used to seeing a singer named Norma Jean by his side. Jean had bowed out of the show to get married, and viewers were less than receptive to Dolly during her first few appearances. A few audience members actually greeted her by chanting Norma Jean's name. It didn't take long for Dolly to win over Wagoner's most loyal watchers, however, and she helped take the Porter Wagoner show to the top of the TV ratings. At the height of their fame, Dolly and Wagoner were drawing a weekly viewership of 3.5 million, and their duets are considered some of the best in the country music genre. This may come as a surprise to fans of Dolly Parton and Whitney Houston, but the tear-jerking ballad I Will Always Love You isn't really about a romantic love affair at all, but a professional partnership that had run its course. In 1974, Dolly was 28 years old and intent upon pursuing a solo career. Sadly, though, that meant breaking with her longtime mentor, collaborator, and friend, Porter Wagoner. Dolly had been appearing on his television show for years by then, and for her, it felt long past time to branch out on her own. Wagoner disagreed, though. In fact, he was distraught over her decision to leave and tried to talk her out of it. So Dolly tackled the situation the best way she knew how, by writing a song. After confronting Wagoner, she went home and wrote I Will Always Love You. The next day, she performed it for him, and deeply touched, Wagoner agreed to let her go. It would be nice to end the story there, of course, but Wagoner actually went on to sue Dolly for breach of contract after she stepped away from the show. The two feuded for years before calling a truce and finally ending up friends. And, true to the song, Dolly was by his side when Wagoner died in 2007. Long before I Will Always Love You became a monster hit for Whitney Houston, Elvis Presley had the opportunity to record Dolly Parton's song. Sadly, the world never got to hear Presley belt out the now classic track thanks to the shenanigans of Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. It was Parker who approached Dolly about his client recording her song, but he made the same demand he'd given other songwriters whose songs were recorded by the king of rock and roll. She would have to hand over half of the songwriting royalties to Parker. Dolly recognized what that would mean for her, but also balked at giving up something that she worked so hard to achieve. She said no, despite being heartbroken that Presley wouldn't be singing her song. Dolly later told CMT, I cried all night, and other people were saying, you're nuts, it's Elvis Presley. I mean, hell, I'd give him all of it. I said, I can't do that. Something in my heart says, don't do that. By 1984, Dolly Parton was on top of the world, as far as her career went at least. But when it came to her personal life, it was a different story entirely. In the book Dolly on Dolly, she recalled, I went to the very bottom as far as my emotions and my health are concerned. I wasn't watching what I ate, wasn't conscious of nutrition, wasn't taking care of myself. I was working hard, and underneath I was a pile of personal and emotional problems. This all came to a head during a performance in Indianapolis when Dolly shocked fans by collapsing on stage. She remembered, all at once I fell apart. It was stomach problems and female problems, all over health problems actually. Doctors soon discovered that Dolly was bleeding internally. That led to a diagnosis of endometriosis, which required surgical intervention. She underwent a partial hysterectomy, which saved her life, but also prevented her from ever having children. Over time, Dolly has taken on a sanguine view about the motherhood she would never experience firsthand. In a 2023 interview with Saga, she said, I always say God didn't let me have children so that all kids could be mine. Coming up in the Nashville country music scene in the 1960s and 70s, Dolly Parton was no stranger to sexist attitudes, ranging from sexual discrimination to outright harassment. She later told Elle that she considered herself lucky to have the wherewithal to deal with those situations in her own way. She added, I've certainly been harassed in my life. I've certainly had to put up with a lot of BS. I was always strong enough to walk away from it and not to have to fall under it.
Women now are dealing with so much harassment in the workplace, and do you think things have changed since 9 to 5?
Not changed enough, I don't think.
In fact, one major reason behind Dolly's decision to end her partnership with Porter Wagoner was the sexist attitude he repeatedly displayed toward her. In a 2008 interview with the Los Angeles Times, she said, "He was very much a male chauvinist pig. He was in charge and it was his show, but he was also very strong-willed. That's why we fought like crazy, because I wouldn't put up with a bunch of stuff." Maybe it's because her first big hit was Dumb Blonde, but for years, people dismissed Dolly Parton as nothing more than a ditz, enslaved to plastic surgery and obsessed with the spotlight. Even Barbara Walters, that famous feminist, asked Dolly in a 1977 interview if her love of sky-high wigs and bling-encrusted dresses might be keeping people from taking her seriously.
Do you ever feel that you're a joke, that people make fun of you?
But the thing about Dolly, she's smart. She's funny and brilliant and quick on her feet. She also knows how to build an empire. Don't believe us? Ask Forbes, which estimated her net worth at $450 million in 2024.
Don't judge a book by the cover, because I'm a real good book.
Of course, Dolly would be the first to say that money isn't everything, but it's also true that she never thought of herself as a pretty girl, and so she piles on the makeup and makes her hair high to enhance what God gave her. And you can't argue with the success she's achieved, or with her colorful comeback to Barbara Walters' condescension.
I can afford to piddle around and do-diddle around with makeups and clothes and stuff because I am secure with myself.
Growing up in an impoverished family of 12 children, Dolly often mothered her siblings. Later, when she moved to Nashville to pursue a singing and songwriting career, she brought a number of her brothers and sisters and their children to live with her. And when Dolly married Carl Thomas Dean in 1966, the two lovebirds talked about having children. Dolly told The Guardian that she and her husband wondered what their kids would be like. Would they be tall like him or small like her? They threw names around. Like any young couple, they dreamed, but nothing happened. Dolly's childbearing years came and went, and she and Carl eventually faced the fact that they would never have children of their own. According to interviews she's given, Dolly is very much resigned to her childlessness. In fact, she celebrates it. If she'd become a mother, she's not sure she would have been able to become the star she was meant to be. She may never have become a mother figure to thousands of children all over the world either, who've had the privilege of reading her children's books, enjoying her songs meant for young listeners, and benefiting from her charity, Imagination Library.
I've done something good. I've done plenty bad, I'm sure. But I just hope that I'll be remembered well.
Dolly Parton is without a doubt an optimist. Anyone who's been through her kind of rags to riches story would be. But there was a time when she got so low that she contemplated ending her life. That dark period came in the early 80s, when she had what she once called an affair of the heart. Dolly was married at the time, and her perceived emotional cheating sent her into a deep depression. The fallout from the affair led to her eating unhealthily, which then gave rise to a number of health issues. She was also juggling family drama at the time, had been receiving random death threats, and had just finished filming The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, an experience she described as a nightmare. Dolly subsequently canceled a spate of performances and bowed out of the entertainment business for 2 years. At one point, she considered suicide. As Dolly tells it, her dog Popeye came running up the stairs, and the pitter-patter of his nails on the ground shocked her back to reality. She considers Popeye's appearance at that pivotal moment as a message from God. She also credits her time at rock bottom with helping her understand the plights of others. For a long time, Dolly Parton was famously apolitical. According to a Rolling Stone interview, she and the very liberal Jane Fonda made sure not to discuss politics while on the set of 9 to 5, mostly to keep the peace. Over time, though, Dolly has had politics thrust upon her, namely in the arena of gay rights.
We are who we are, and we should be allowed to be who we are.
In the 80s and 90s, Dolly became a gay icon and go-to inspiration for drag queens around the world. Since then, she has embraced the gay community in a number of ways, including speaking out in support of marriage equality and transgender rights. Her support for the LGBTQ community helped inspire fans to organize a so-called Gay Day at her Dollywood theme park in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. This move provoked the Ku Klux Klan, whose members protested the event and sent Dolly death threats. But Dolly is not one to be intimidated by hate groups. She later told the New York Daily News, "If I was gay, I would have come out of the closet just a flying."
I keep saying, well, if you're the fine Christian that you think you are, why are you judging people?
Dolly Parton fans have heard a lot about her mother, Avie Lee Parton, both in her songs and in her interviews. Those fans would likely have been confused when in 2001 it was reported that the country music icon was squaring off against her beloved mother in the courtroom. Dolly, joined by all but 2 of her siblings, alleged that their then 77-year-old mother was no longer capable of managing her affairs. But Avie herself opposed their efforts to prevent her from spending money without oversight. Despite Abby's protests, Dolly and her siblings wanted to appoint a conservator to manage their mom's affairs. Court battle dragged on for years, and sadly, the whole affair became moot when Dolly's mother died in December 2003 at the age of 80. Dolly Parton has seen her share of loss. Her partner and one-time mentor, Porter Wagner, died in 2007 at the age of 80. She lost her brother Floyd in 2018, and of course, she had lost her infant brother Larry just 4 days after he was born. Perhaps one of the most tragic losses on a long line of them, though, was that of Dolly Parton's niece, Tever Parton, who died in March 2017. She was just 36 years old. Just a month prior to Tever's death, Dolly had endured the passing of her manager, Don Warden, whom she'd met in 1967 on the set of The Porter Wagner Show. Warden died at age 87 of natural causes. Dolly responded to Warden's death with the perfect line, which of course she wrote herself, "I will always love you."
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dollywood!
When Dolly Parton opened her country western theme park, Dollywood, she did so with history in mind. The land the park stands on has a storied past, having served as an attraction in the Pigeon Forge area since 1961, when it was known as the Rebel Railroad. Dolly bought the property in 1986, adding a number of new attractions, including a chapel and a rocking porch theater, and the rest is history. Dollywood has since become one of America's most popular theme parks, but has also seen a string of serious injuries leading to lawsuits and bad press. The most recent of these lawsuits was brought by a mother of two who claims that her experience on the River Rush water coaster ended with partial paralyzation. According to TMZ, the woman was propelled off her seat and struck her spine on a hard surface. In 2018, she sued Dolly for $2 million. Another such case put the spotlight on Dollywood's safety record in 2014, when a woman fell and struck her head on the pavement while exiting the Waltz Swinger ride. She reportedly suffered spinal and neck injuries as well as a broken jaw and sued for $475,000. The two parties settled out of court. Dolly Parton's partnership with Porter Wagner propelled her to stardom, but it was her mega-hit duets with fellow country star Kenny Rogers that sent both their careers into the stratosphere. The duo's 1983 hit Islands in the Stream held the #1 position in Billboard's pop, adult, contemporary, and country charts. Speaking shortly after Rogers' death in 2020, Dolly found it tough to maintain her composure.
I loved Kenny with all my heart. My heart's broken, and a big old chunk of it has gone with him today.
She concluded the interview by displaying a photo of herself and Rogers.
I hold that up to everybody, so I know you're sad as I am, but God bless you, Kenny.
One quirk in Dolly Parton's fashion sense is the way she tends to cover the tops of her hands by wearing fingerless gloves. Sometimes made of lace and often flesh-colored, these gloves have become a part of her signature style in recent years, but fans may have wondered why. There's been much speculation about why she wears these gloves, with some theorizing that their purpose is to cover tattoos. Speaking with Vanity Fair, Dolly confirmed that she is tatted up and explained the somewhat sad reason for getting her ink. She said, "I was covering up some scars that I had because I have a tendency to have keloid scar tissue, and I have a tendency where if I have any kind of scars anywhere, then they kind of have a purple tinge that I can never get rid of." As she told W Magazine, it's that tendency towards scarring that made her want to get tattoos in the first place. She explained, "I've had surgeries for different things, and if the scars didn't heal properly, I just got to put tattoos to take the sting out." Dolly Parton met her husband Carl Thomas Dean on her very first day in Nashville. The two ran into each other outside the wishy-washy laundromats when Dolly was 18 and Carl was 21. Carl was struck by Dolly's pretty face. Dolly liked how sweet and shy Carl was. 2 years later, the two tied the knot in Georgia, with only Dolly's mother and the preacher in attendance. The wedding was a rushed affair, partly because Dolly's label was worried that becoming a wife could stall her career. Dolly, never one to be told what to do, decided to elope with her sweetheart. Her mother made her a dress and a bouquet, and Dolly and Carl found a small Baptist church that would take them on short notice. Their marriage wasn't always easy, of course. At a 1966 BMI dinner, Carl told his wife she'd have to attend such events on her own from then on. He wanted nothing to do with the entertainment business and remained true to his word. Dolly, who often described her husband as a romantic, admitted to CNN in 2019 that he had only seen her perform live a few times and wasn't really a big fan of her music.
We've always had a good time. He's crazy and I'm crazy. We laugh a lot, and I think that's been one of the healthiest, the most precious part of our relationship.
Carl Dean died on March 3, 2025 at the age of 82. In a social media post, Dolly provided a statement on the death of her beloved husband. It read, "Carl and I spent many wonderful years together. Words can't do justice to the love we shared for over 60 years. Thank you for your prayers and sympathy." If you or anyone you know is struggling or in crisis, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. You can also receive 24/7 crisis support via text. Send NEDA to 741-741.